Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're doing something a little different. We are taking a single, and I mean truly ambitious, framework, a unified blueprint for global well-being, and we are going to map its architecture from the ground up.
And the source material for this is it's remarkable. We're synthesizing a whole stack of documents.
Mhm.
We've got things that span the entire career and philosophy of a creative strategist named Bill McConney.
Right, and that's blended with these other documents outlining a revolutionary educational framework. It's called the Sensory Guild.
Exactly. And it all culminates in this universal life operating system, the HOS.
So our mission today is, well, it's pretty complex. We want to extract the core architectural principles that connect, this is the amazing part, ancient Greek geometry, modern neurological repair, and the actual biology of the Earth.
We're looking for that unifying thread, the thread in a system designed to restore human perception and ultimately foster what it calls global harmony.
And it does that by trying to prove on a structural scientific level that, and I'm quoting here, we were never separate.
And the way we structured this dive is to follow that flow. We'll start with the universal structure, the geometry, then we'll move to the individual instrument, which is all about sensory repair.
Okay. And from there,
From there, we zoom out to the relational field, the Earth-Mind connection, and finally we land on the practical, collective blueprint, the HOS itself.
so it's an exercise in seeing how the same laws really do govern everything from the atom to an entire civilization.
That's the goal.
Okay, let's get into it. Part one, the architecture of coherence. We have this central figure you mentioned, Bill McConney. The sources describe him as a creative strategist, a story architect, and a systems thinker. And his career spans over 4 decades.
Right. And I think the first question anyone would have is, how do you reconcile such a diverse portfolio?
Exactly. How does one person work across all these different fields?
I think it's the sheer breadth that actually validates his systems approach. He isn't someone who just specialized in one tiny area. He specialized in structure,
Mm.
in the underlying principles.
So he's applying these fundamental laws to everything. Design, education, music, even the healing sciences and humanitarian strategy.
Yes. And that's what proves the universality of the principles he's working with. The structure is the same, whether you're looking at a symphony or a cell.
I'm just looking at the scope of his collaborations here. It's kind of staggering. You've got the National Parkinson Foundation and the OHSU Neurological Sciences Institute on one side.
And then you have Warner Brothers and the Portland Opera on the other.
Right, plus promotional work for His Holiness, the Dalai Lama and the Gyuto monks. So how does a single methodology, a single way of thinking, translate so flawlessly between, say, a neurological institute and a major film studio?
Because he sees them as the same fundamental challenge. He views any system, whether it's a human nervous system or a corporate hierarchy, through this single guiding lens of structure and geometry.
So a failing corporation is just a structure that's out of proportion.
Precisely. Just as a dysfunctional nervous system is a structure that's out of harmony. For him, coherence, health, success, beauty, whatever you want to call it, is achieved when the internal and external proportions finally align.
Okay, so let's get to the foundation of that alignment. The core metaphor that keeps coming up here is Metatron's cube. Now, a lot of people might see this as a mystical or, a New Age symbol.
And it often is.
Yeah.
But in this context, it's treated as a mathematical operating model, a blueprint.
So what is it, fundamentally?
It's the geometric matrix. It's the single shape from which all 5 platonic solids emerge.
And those solids are the tetrahedron, the cube, octahedron, dodecahedron, and icosahedron.
The very same.
Mm.
And those 5 shapes are the geometric blueprints for all stable physical matter and energy in our universe. They're the only perfectly symmetrical 3D forms possible.
So the logic is, if you understand the cube, you understand the foundational architecture of reality itself?
You've got it. It's his metaphor for unlocking new possibilities because it reveals the fundamental shapes that govern everything, whether you're looking at the shape of a viral protein or the structure of a perfectly crafted sentence.
That's a powerful synthesis. But the geometry, as the sources point out, goes even deeper. It's rooted in Pythagoras and the golden section.
Yes, often represented by the Greek letter phi, with its value of roughly 1.618. And McConaughey's view is that this ratio isn't just, an aesthetic preference for beauty. He calls it the fundamental key to understanding the universe itself.
And we really do see this golden section everywhere, don't we? I mean, in the spirals of galaxies, the arrangement of seeds in a sunflower.
The branching of trees, the proportions of a healthy human body and face. It's all over the place.
But why? What makes that specific ratio so special?
Because it represents the most efficient, the most dynamic, and the most growth-oriented principle of expansion that exists in physics. It's the only geometric principle where the ratio of the whole to the larger part is exactly the same as the ratio of the larger part to the smaller part,
Which means it can allow for infinite growth.
without losing its structural integrity. It can scale perfectly.
So if you're designing an educational system or a strategy for a nonprofit, structuring it with this principle ensures it can grow and replicate efficiently. And it does all that while maintaining its core mission, its beauty.
The mantra really is, truth and beauty emerge through proportion, balance, and these unseen harmonies.
Okay, but this is where I have to step in and ask the question I think you, the listener, are probably asking right now. How can something that's based on an esoteric geometric figure serve as a neutral, secular foundation for global adoption? That's the whole mandate of the HOS, right?
Like, that is the right question, an essential one.
Doesn't that immediately put up a kind of mystical barrier to entry for a lot of people?
It would, if it were presented that way. But the sources address this by reframing the geometry entirely. They argue that the golden section and the Platonic solids are just objective mathematical facts. They govern physics and biology, whether you believe in them or not.
So you don't have to call it Metatron's cube.
Exactly. You can call it the structure of the five stable forms. The geometry is the same. The language they use is purely one of structural efficiency and coherence. It's physics, not faith.
And what's so fascinating to me is where this whole architectural belief system started for him. It wasn't in a university lecture hall.
No, not at all. It was driven by personal necessity, by survival. His memoir talks about drawing golden proportions in sacred geometry from the time he was a child. He used them as an argument with chaos.
That's an incredibly powerful phrase, an argument with chaos. Geometry became his way to survive what sounds like a very traumatic childhood. It was a method to impose structural order where there was just relentless noise and unpredictability.
It was psychological proof for him, proof that beauty could rise from darkness. He was searching for an irrefutable, eternal law.
So if he could find that geometric coherence in the outside world,
It provided a basis for believing that coherence was possible inside himself. And this early quest for structure was really nurtured by his mentor, a man named Lloyd Reynolds, who taught him calligraphy.
I remember reading that Reynolds described calligraphy as the visual language of the divine.
He did. And also beauty's mathematics. Every single letter, every stroke, had to be structurally sound. It had to be balanced and proportional.
So that practice just deeply imprinted this idea that everything, creativity, strategy, life itself, must be structurally sound and harmonious.
And that's the seed for everything that comes later, for the entire human operating system. It's about translating abstract structure into palpable beauty and making it work across hospitals, film studios, and humanitarian missions.
The blueprint is so clear then. Form follows function, and function follows structure. And the ultimate purpose is always to restore structural integrity, which then leads to harmony.
Okay, that wraps up the external architecture. I think now we have to pivot
We do. We pivot inward.
to part two, to the internal instrument, to how the individual body and mind must be tuned to even be able to receive this universal harmony. This is the essential bridge. It's a critical link. If the universal structure is coherent, Metatron's cube and the golden section, but the individual human nervous system is all fractured by trauma or miseducation, you can't experience that harmony.
You're not a properly tuned radio, so you can't pick up the signal.
Exactly. And this brings us to the Sensory Guild and this educational framework they call SATORI. It stands for Sensory Awakened Transformative Organic Resonance Intelligence.
Satori. It starts with a pretty simple premise, doesn't it? That learning should match the body's natural design.
It sounds simple, but it's revolutionary in practice. Multisensory learning at its core is just learning through touch, sight, sound, movement, taste, and smell. All of them working together in harmony, not in isolation.
And the neurological evidence for this, as laid out in the sources, is just overwhelming.
It is. There's a key quote that really anchors the whole educational philosophy. It's, the more senses you use, the more memory you make. Your brain loves rich, cross-wired input. It uses redundant pathways. What it doesn't like is the single-sense isolation of, say, staring at a textbook for 3 hours.
Let's make sure you, the listener, really get the mechanism here, not just the principle. What does this actually look like in a classroom or at home?
Okay, so it means total body engagement. Let's say you're teaching a child the letter A. They aren't just looking at the shape on a screen. They may be tracing that shape in a tray of wet sand. That's touch, it's kinesthetic.
And they're speaking the sound aloud.
Ah, right. So that's auditory, it's vibrational, and then maybe they dance the geometric shape of the letter with their whole body. That's movement.
And the point is, these aren't just clever little mnemonic devices.
No, they're the learning process. The memory is being encoded in multiple parts of the brain simultaneously.
The methodology uses two specific practices, right? Layering the senses and linking modes.
Yes. Layering means you make sure a concept is experienced through multiple inputs at the same time. So for a lesson on biology, a kid might be seeing the structure of a leaf, touching the soil it grew in, smelling the flower, hearing the scientific name.
And maybe even tasting a related edible fruit.
Exactly, you're layering the experience. And linking modes is about expressing that concept through a totally different modality.
Hmm.
So you might have students act out the historical events they just read about.
Or write a rhythmic song about a complex mathematical function.
Yes, you're forcing the brain to translate the information from one network to another, which builds incredibly robust understanding.
And there's one more critical ingredient here, sparking joy.
This is the non-negotiable part. The sources really emphasize that emotion is the glue. Sensory joy, or any strong positive emotional connection, locks that memory into place far more effectively than just rote repetition.
The Sensory Guild seems to view this method not just as a better way to learn, but as a fundamental birthright.
It is. But here's where the Satori framework gets really, really expansive. It doesn't wait until a child is 5 years old and going to school.
It starts much earlier.
It begins in the womb.
Okay, so the Sanatory 2 system, this is about immersive prenatal sensory development. How is this justified scientifically in the material?
The documents cite a lot of research showing that the fetus is not a passive passenger. It's acutely tuned to vibration, to sound, to the light patterns it perceives through the maternal body. So the Satori 2 system uses specific, complex music and carefully modulated light patterns to create an intact, harmonized nervous system before the moment of birth.
So the idea is you're literally architecting a high-capacity nervous system from day zero.
You're laying the foundation. There's a great quote from the educational psychologist Jane Healy: "Sensory input lays the tracks for future thinking." Every organized sensory experience in early life is like architectural scaffolding for empathy, for language, for mathematical reasoning, and so crucially, for emotional regulation.
And this isn't just for kids. This idea of cognitive cross-training extends across the entire lifespan.
It does. It's the application of that universal law of coherence, but now for neurological repair. For example, the sources have these case studies detailing how carefully curated multisensory environments, music, certain scents, specific textures, familiar voices, can spark long-forgotten memories in dementia patients.
It's bridging gaps that purely verbal cues just can't cross.
Exactly. And you see the same thing with stroke survivors. The combination of rhythmic movement and song, which engages multiple neural pathways at once, has shown incredible results in rebuilding language capacity far faster than traditional single-mode rehab.
The body is teaching the brain how to speak again.
It's rebraiding the connections. But the ultimate goal of all this sensory work isn't just better education or rehabilitation. It's a profound shift in consciousness, a shift toward what the sources call kinesthetic perception, or the mother tongue.
Okay, I need you to break this one down for us. We know kinesthesis is about body awareness. But here, kinesthetic perception is defined as the original human sensory state where all the senses are braided. What does it actually mean for your senses to be braided together?
It means that the output of one sensory organ is immediately and automatically translated into information for another. It's a neurologically expanded state of perception where a child's nervous system is so fully attuned that the entire world is experienced as one single, woven field of information.
This is not mystical, though. The sources say it's structural.
It's structural. We're talking about neurology.
Okay, so give us a functional example. What does a child in this state actually perceive?
A child in this state doesn't just hear a sound. They feel its texture. They feel its emotional resonance in their body. They don't just see a person's face. They perceive the internal intention and the emotional temperature of the person looking at them.
So sight carries temperature. Sound carries a somatic meaning, like the feeling of being held. Movement carries intention.
Yes, they are reading the world in its totality without the filter of our fragmented adult cognitive processing.
And the sources link the loss of this original braided state directly back to trauma.
Directly. It's defined as the baseline awareness that was lost by violence, shock, and separation at the moment of birth.
Mhm.
That early trauma being disconnected, that first moment of non-belonging, is what fractures the nervous system. It forces the senses into separate, isolated channels as a defense mechanism.
So the gentle birth approaches described in the sources, the Le Boyer-inspired methods, they're presented as an architectural necessity.
They are. It's about reactivating that original sensory architecture to ensure a continuity of connection rather than starting life with the trauma of fracture.
That concept that we are meant to live in a state where our senses are braided, that's transformative. It reframes our normal state of fragmentation as the true disability, a scar left by that first fracture of belonging.
It really does.
Yes.
And it means that the process of healing and learning is really a process of reintegrating that internal instrument, making it whole and coherent again, structured by the very same harmony we find in the golden section.
Okay, so we've tuned the internal instrument. It's coherent. Now in part 3, we ask, where does it tune to? And the answer provided here is the Earth itself. The Earth serves as the physical proof that we were never separate.
And this is where we shift from ancient geometry to hard biology, specifically to what the sources identify as the Earth's nervous system, the mycelial network.
I really appreciate that the sources are so explicit that this is not a metaphor.
No, not at all. It's a scientific concept.
Yeah.
We're talking about the vast fungal network that exists under our feet everywhere.
The scientific literature they cite confirms that mycelium has many of the characteristics we associate with animal intelligence.
Absolutely. It's been shown to exhibit distributed decision-making. It uses electrical signals, bioelectrical pulses, that look almost identical to our own neural spikes.
It also has environmental memory. It maps where resources are. It remembers threats.
And it facilitates cross-species communication. It's literally the biological internet of the forest. It is a planetary-scale nervous system, and it's at least 1 billion years old.
And this is where the sources drop what I would call the hammer blow of connection. Human intelligence, our own nervous systems, evolved from this very system.
Yes. Our brains, our neural pathways, they show the same branching fractal patterns, the same signaling logic, the same resource distribution methods as the mycelial network. The structural coherence that Bakanovi was searching for in geometry is mirrored perfectly in the fungi beneath our feet.
And this planetary coherence connects directly back to the individual instrument we were just talking about, through the gut as the earth mind node.
It's a structural argument. The core idea is that our gut microbiome, this complex microbial civilization living inside us, is literally a local extension of the forest's distributed mind.
So it's not just about instinct or digestion. It's a living intelligence substrate. It senses, it learns, it predicts, it collaborates with us, it's host.
You are carrying an essential piece of the Earth's networked intelligence around inside you. Your gut acts as a biological interface organ between your individual self and the Earth.
So if your internal reality, the microbiome, is structurally connected to the outer reality, the mycelial network, then the physical self is inherently and fundamentally relational.
You're a node in a much larger field, which brings us directly to the vibrational communion model.
Okay, this model explains the continuous loop of information flow. It starts with acoustics and ends with the cosmic lattice. We talk casually about good vibes, but the sources here are anchoring it in actual physics. The core principle is scientific. Everything you utter becomes structure.
That statement needs to be unpacked carefully. Your voice is a physics event. When you speak, you're emitting frequency waves, and those waves carry information.
And since the human body is mostly water, and water molecules are highly sensitive to frequency.
Your own sound literally structures the water inside your own body. It alters your nervous system state from the inside out. That frequency then transmits through the air, through the water memory cycles, and it communicates with the surrounding biome, including that mycelial network.
So the state of our nervous system, our emotional coherence, or our fracture, is being continually broadcast and received by the Earth.
That's the loop. Human voice and emotion feeds into air and water memory, which feeds into the mycelial network, or Earth mind, which is connected to the cosmic lattice. The source documents suggest this is why collective trauma or collective disharmony is literally felt by the planet. It's not a spiritual idea, it's signal physics.
If you speak and breathe and sing in a state of chaos, you are structuring your internal water and the external environment with that chaos.
And if you consciously choose coherence, you transmit harmony.
I find the inclusion of pine here so fascinating. It brings it from abstract physics right back down to concrete biochemistry. It's a specific molecule that acts as a biochemical amplifier for this entire connection.
Pine is a terpene molecule. It's abundant in forests, especially in cedar and pine trees. When you inhale it, It's been shown to modulate specific brainwave patterns and enhance sensory integration. It opens what the sources call pattern recognition windows.
So it increases your interoceptive sensitivity, your ability to sense your own internal state, and your external sensory integration.
Yes, and this is likely why so many indigenous cultures leveraged cedar and pine inhalation in their rituals. It wasn't just a pleasant smell, it was a biochemical key, an access point to the informational field, enhancing the ability to perceive that Earth-Mind network.
In this continuous loop of belonging, it all culminates in the highest state of harmony, which is the realization of the initial thesis, holospheric perception.
This is the completed return, the individual reconnecting to the planetary field.
Holospheric perception is defined as perceiving the world from inside the world. I need to push on this because it can sound very abstract. Is the source material talking about some mystical transcendence here, or is this a measurable physiological state?
The sources argue it's a measurable relational state of presence and awareness. The key is shifting the locus of your awareness. In holospheric perception, your awareness is not located inside your body, because you perceive your body as being located inside your awareness.
A 360-degree, non-local sense of self, where the line between internal and external just dissolves.
And this realization isn't accessed through intellectual understanding, it's accessed through recognition. It is the deep felt sense in the body that you are never separate.
And the physiological markers are critical here for establishing this as a biological truth, not just a nice philosophy.
They are. The documents describe the physical signs of the presence of this field, what they call a mother field or she who watches, as being subtle but palpable. A profound warmth behind the sternum, the air in the room feeling like it's growing thick.
And most importantly, the entire nervous system stopping its lifelong pattern of defensive bracing.
That's the moment. That physiological response proves that the system's goal is biological restoration, not ideological conversion. The body remembers what safety feels like, and the nervous system stops defending itself against the world because it realizes it's being held and protected by the Earth Mind.
That seamless translation from geometric laws to biological coherence to planetary consciousness is really the essence of this whole thing. Okay, now we move on. Part 4, the universal blueprint. This is the practical deployment of this entire insight with the goal of achieving global harmony.
And this is where we get to the Human Operating System, HOS, which is carried forward by this global creative network called the Circle of Us Voice.
The mandate for the HOS was incredibly restrictive, wasn't it?
Extremely. It was. Build a system that is so complete, so secular, and so scientifically framed that it can be adopted globally without any cultural, political, or mystical barriers. It had to transcend ideology.
So the HOS is framed as our original operating system, restored, and it uses natural laws and geometric coherence to do it.
And its architecture is built on two main pillars, a developmental arc for a human life and a set of universal laws of operation.
Let's start with the arc, the 4 natural life phases. This basically translates ancient wisdom traditions into neutral, modern developmental psychology.
And it provides a complete, dignified map for a whole life. It fundamentally challenges the modern Western expectation of just relentless productivity until you drop. They're designed to make sure that every stage of life has meaning and contribution.
The first is growing, which is from birth to age 25. The focus here is on building that coherent instrument we talked about. Sensory integration, emotional regulation, and ethical formation. This is where the Satori principles are applied most intensely.
The goal is to produce a stable human being with an intact internal architecture.
Then comes the 7th phase, contribution, from 25 to 50.
This is the period of full engagement, mastery, responsibility, community roles, and crucially, balancing work with joy. This is the period of our peak behavioral capacity, where the stable foundation you built in phase 1 allows for the maximum positive impact on the world.
Then we get to the 3rd phase, which is a critical transition, stewarding, from 50 to 75.
And here the focus shifts dramatically. It shifts to mentorship, to simplification, to cultural transmission. This means actively passing on power and knowledge rather than hoarding it. This phase honors the wisdom holder who stabilizes the next generation by ensuring continuity and minimizing generational fracture.
And finally, the completing phase, from 75 onward.
This is focused on clarity, dignity, peace, and life review. It's the time for embodying wisdom, resolving any residual trauma, and completing the arc with profound peace. The HOS ensures the entire lifespan is valued, creating a culture where elders are revered as sources of stable coherence, not just discarded as economic liabilities.
But the real backbone of the HOS, what makes it truly universal and non-ideological, is the 7 operational principles. And these are presented not as philosophy, but as neutral, natural laws that just govern reality. We have to explore these because this is the practical code.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
The argument of the HOS is that if you violate these principles, your system, whether it's your personal life or a global economy, will descend into incoherence. Doesn't matter what your good intentions are, they're presented as undeniable structures, ultimately derived from those Platonic solid geometries we discussed at the very beginning.
Okay, let's start with 2 that seem deeply connected to the sensory work: mental causation and vibration signal physics.
Mental causation is the principle that your thoughts influence your behavior, your mood, and your physical health. The HOS applies this by teaching conscious management of your internal narrative. It's not just positive thinking. It's recognizing that if your internal monologue is constantly one of fracture and fear, your nervous system will respond with the physical defense posture and inflammation.
That's a measurable thing. Structure shaping function.
Exactly. And vibration, or signal physics, is the mechanism for that structure. Everything you do, the sound of your voice, your posture, your emotions, creates measurable physical effects.
We touched on this with the vibrational communion model.
Right. And the practical application here is that the system teaches you intentional vocal resonance and movement to shift your internal state. If your posture is closed and your voice is compressed, you are signaling threat both internally to your own body and externally to others. The HOS teaches you how to consciously align your physical form with the desired state, and thereby broadcast coherence.
Then there's spectrum dynamics, or polarity. This seems crucial for conflict resolution and emotional literacy.
It is. Spectrum dynamics asserts that experiences exist in degrees. So love and fear, or pain and pleasure, they aren't absolute opposites, they're just points on a single spectrum. The HOS teaches that you can intentionally shift your position on that spectrum. If you're experiencing fear, which is a low-frequency state, you can use vibration physics-like intentional vocalization or a posture shift to raise your frequency toward love without having to deny that the initial fear existed.
So it offers a physics-based pathway out of emotional stagnation instead of just trying to intellectualize the problem, and that connects powerfully to pattern reflection or correspondence.
Correspondence is the principle. Your inner state shapes your outer results. As within, so without. If your internal architecture is geometrically fractured because of past trauma, you will subconsciously attract and create outer relationships and environments that reflect that same fracture. The HOS teaches that external conflict is often just an opportunity to diagnose your own internal structural instability. Harmony has to start within the circle of the self.
Okay, the last 3 are structural laws that govern the environment: cyclic rhythm, consequence flow, and dual expression.
Cyclic rhythm is foundational. All natural systems, sleep, moods, seasons, biology, economies, they all work in cycles. The HOS teaches you to map and honor your own natural cycles, to avoid burnout, and to resist the unnatural, linear, unsustainable pressures of modern life.
And consequence flow.
That's the non-negotiable law of cause and effect. Actions produce predictable outcomes. The system removes the possibility of self-deception by demanding accountability based on measurable results, not just intentions.
And finally, dual expression, which is often labeled as gender. This principle can be misinterpreted.
It can. In the HOS, this has nothing to do with societal gender. It refers to the absolute necessity of a dynamic interplay between the masculine principle, which is action, drive, definition, and the feminine principle, which is receptivity, listening, and flow. Creation of any kind, whether it's biological or strategic, requires both. It needs active input and a receptive container to hold it.
If a community is all action and no listening, it collapses.
And if it's all listening and no action, nothing ever gets created. The HOS demands a structural balance between these two dynamic forces.
This really is a complete system. It uses geometry to define the laws, and then it provides a human developmental map based on those same laws.
And the entire system is designed to be self-sustaining and globally implementable, carried forward by that circle of Os. The whole thing is enshrined in what they call the Declaration of Cognitive Independence, which is a new charter guaranteeing essential internal rights.
Okay, let's talk about the implications of that. Demanding rights like memory sovereignty and emotional literacy rights.
Memory sovereignty is profound. It's the right to determine the integrity of your own narrative and your own memory storage. Free from manipulation, from digital surveillance, from forced psychological conditioning. In a world of deepfakes and algorithmic control, this is the recognition that yourself is defined by your memories. And the right to own those memories is sacred.
And emotional literacy rights.
That's the right to be taught, from childhood, the tools for emotional regulation and fluency. those Asota skills we talked about, so that you are not vulnerable to external emotional manipulation or internal chaos. It's the right to a coherent nervous system. This work truly constitutes, as they say, a completely new story of what a human being is, one that's built on structural integrity and the fundamental right to belong.
Now we have to move to the final and I think crucial section, Part V. This section provides the emotional context. It grounds this whole pursuit of harmony in the reality of human struggle. We have to understand the architecture of fracture to really appreciate the architecture of coherence.
And to do that, we return to McConaughey's personal history. He was born into noise and early trauma, and he developed hypervigilance as his primary survival mechanism. He actually calls this hypervigilance his PhD, learning to read the temperature of a room before he could read a book, constantly scanning for conflict.
Hypervigilance is the ultimate armor, isn't it? It's the nervous system maintaining a constant defensive posture against the world.
It's necessary for survival in chaos, but it's absolutely devastating for your long-term health and your ability to connect with others.
And for him, art and music, specifically his 55 Stratocaster guitar, became his escape.
They were the external structures that connected him back to those eternal laws of harmony. The golden section in a painting, the perfect octave in music. They were proof that order was possible, even when his own body felt profoundly unsafe.
And this personal fracture leads him to a theatrical exploration of these shared human wounds in his chamber play, The Fork and the Octave, which is structured around that very seam between harmony and fracture.
The geometry of the play is key. It features three figures who represent different, almost mythic responses to a shared wound. And the sources are so clear about this. They are not political opposites. They are two different answers to the exact same trauma.
So we have Roy Cohn, who is called the Blade. He survives by hardening into armor using force and manipulation to make himself untouchable. His survival code is to survive, become untouchable.
And then you have Ruth Bader Ginsburg, who is called the Stone. She survives by endurance, by discipline, and by a refusal to become the thing that frightened her. Her survival code is to survive, remain human. She structures her life with this rigorous internal integrity to withstand all the external chaos.
And the third figure is M. Metatron, who is the witness. This figure simply records the event without any judgment, so the play isn't a debate over ideology.
Not at all. It's a ritual of recognition for the audience. It's asking you, which one of these strategies did you use to manage your own childhood wound? Are you a blade or a stone?
The play focuses on the terrible efficiency of that armor, but also the immense cost of maintaining it. Cohn's armor, while it's functional for him, separates him completely from any possibility of coherence or belonging.
While Ginsburg's armor is more porous, it allows for connection through integrity, but it still requires this constant, exhausting effort to maintain.
And this is where the healing mechanism, the physiological truth, comes in. It connects the trauma right back to the body's inability to rest. The central, non-negotiable event of the play is Roy Cohn's tremor.
And this is not an emotional confession. It's not a moment of moral awakening. The sources describe it as a single, involuntary physiological event. It's the moment where his nervous system, after decades of holding everything in, just releases its grip for the first time.
The body betrays the structure of the armor that he spent his entire life building.
It's the moment the old survival code just short circuits. The tremor is the body's absolute truth speaking over the mind's narrative of control. It is, as the play calls it, the octave returning to alignment. It shows that real transformation happens through physical release, not through intellectual rhetoric.
The tremor tells the audience that the wound has just opened, and the field, that possibility of belonging, has just entered the room.
And the goal of that scene isn't redemption for Khan, who spent his life enforcing separation. It's recognition. It's seeing that tiny crack of involuntary humanity. Yeah. And with that, the permission for the body to finally simply rest.
And that completes the circle of this deep dive. The initial trauma created the need for geometric order. That led to the search for sensory restoration with Satori, which then anchors itself in the planetary field of the mycelium, and finally delivers a universal map, the HOS, that validates the body's ultimate truth.
Which is that moment of recognition and rest, symbolized by the tremor. The entire system, from geometry to the nervous system, is designed to restore that foundational sense of belonging that was fractured at birth and then reinforced by a lifetime of trauma. It's a blueprint for returning to the state of we were never separate.
This has been an incredibly expansive deep dive into a unified architectural blueprint that spans from Pythagoras to planetary biology defining global harmony not as some fuzzy emotional state, but as a structural condition.
We've unpacked a system for coherence that starts with the geometric foundation of Metatron's cube, moves to sensory reintegration through Satori, anchors itself in the Earth's mycelial network, and then delivers a universal non-ideological operational system for collective coherence, the HOS, detailing that path from trauma to wisdom.
The final takeaway for you, the learner, is profoundly structural. The deepest, most effective work you can do to contribute to global harmony is internal. It's about restoring the integrity of your own nervous system, giving your body permission to finally feel safe, and letting go of the armor you built to survive a lifetime of fracture. That single act of physiological release is the prerequisite for coherence in the circle of us.
What really stands out to me is the recognition that belonging is not a philosophical aspiration. It is a vibrational condition. If the principles of harmony and rhythm are physical laws, and if your voice is a physics event that structures water and air and the underlying earth-mind network, the mycelium, what happens to our world when we consciously choose to speak and sing and breathe in alignment? The circle of us is not a metaphor for community. It is a structural necessity based on acoustic physics and planetary biology. You belong to life, and the universe is listening.